It is Monday, February 3rd. I'm Jamie Fitzpatrick. Welcome to The Signal. Here in Newfoundland and Labrador, we look after each other, always ready to help a neighbor. But the situation facing our charities and nonprofit organizations tells a more complicated story. Donations lately are not keeping up with costs. Statistics show that charitable donations right across the country aren't necessarily keeping up with costs, and this province is no exception. I want to mention one thing, though, before we get into today's discussion. I want to let you know about an episode on The Signal coming up on Thursday because it's dominating the news on the eve of our new trade war now between Canada and the United States. So we're all wondering what it means for the economy, what it means for household budgets, and we're going to get to the bottom of that on Thursday's episode as we gather a panel of guests to talk tariffs. Now, on to today's conversation. In 2022, just over 15% of tax returns filed in Newfoundland and Labrador reported a charitable donation. And among Canadian provinces, only New Brunswick posted a lower percentage. That's according to a report from Canada Helps. But it's not just us. The problem is nationwide. In fact, Canada Helps says charitable donations have been dropping steadily across the country for over a decade. And there is some local evidence to back that up. Today we're going to talk about the cash crunch in the nonprofit world, how charities are coping, and what are the implications for people who need their help. I'm joined in the studio by Nicole Daw, Executive Director of the Community Foundation of Newfoundland and Labrador. Hello.
Hi, Jamie.
And also by Colin Corcoran. He's CEO of the Community Sector Council. Hi.
Good afternoon.
Before we go any further, I wonder if we should just pause and find out a little bit more about the perspective that you guys bring to the discussion. Nicole, tell us more about the Community Foundation of Newfoundland and Labrador and your mandate.
Yeah, sure. So we are the Community Foundation of Newfoundland and Labrador. We are one of over 200 community foundations across the country and are fortunate to get to be the one for this province here. So community foundations are really about inspiring and mobilizing local resources for the good of a community. So in our case, that does mean individual donations or supporting charities who we have funds for, but it also means around knowledge. So we're one of the co-leads on NL Vital Signs with the Harris Center. So the financial piece is really important, but we also know that data and relationship connections are a really important resource. And so we really try and inspire and make connections amongst all of that.
What's at the bottom of all this? Is it a government-supported organization? Is it an independent nonprofit?
Yeah, so we are basically the public foundation for the province. Again, there's over 200 of us as part of the community foundations of Canada. And so we act locally, but we also at times through either the Government of Canada or different national corporations will work together on granting programs.
And Colin, with the Community Sector Council, what's the job when you show up every day for work?
Oh, the job looks different every single morning I walk in the door. So the Community Sector Council of Newfoundland and Labrador has been supporting the community sector here in this province since 1977. And our mandate is to foster social and economic prosperity for our province. And we do that through the community sector. So we like to support change makers here in the province.
How do you go about doing that?
So we have a number of lines of business. One is capacity building, which includes training and development for the sector. Another is advocacy and being that convener between our sector and other sectors, particularly the public sector here in this province. And we've been running programs as well to help out charities and nonprofits.
So is it all about helping community groups, charities and nonprofits get better at what they do?
Absolutely. Be able to deliver on the programs more efficiently, be able to train them, particularly their boards of directors, their volunteers, so they can fulfill their mandates at the end of the day, and support them as that convener and uplift their voices within the community.
So just to put things in a larger perspective, when it comes to nonprofits or charities in this province, where does most of the revenue come from, and how much do they rely on donations, or does it vary? Nicole, do you want to start there?
Yeah, so it's definitely a really wide range. of where we get revenue come from across. And I'm probably going to let Colin speak a little bit more to the specifics of what that pie looks like. But I think one of the big things and one of the reasons we've kind of ended up in these conversations is challenges around revenue and the sources of it is one of the things that are really challenging for nonprofits across the province right now. And one of the reasons that we've kind of come together and others have come together to figure out how do we strengthen kind of the capacity around revenue diversification and explore kind of other lines of revenue for from a nonprofit side, but also for folks who might be on the funding side. And Colin, I don't know if you want to add some of the more specifics on kind of what that revenue pie looks like for a lot of nonprofits in the province.
Oh, you know me, I love data set at the end of the day. So in Newfoundland, Labrador, it comes to a surprise to some people. We actually have $1.29 billion in income in the community sector here in this province. And that's separated into a number of categories. In particular, 41% of revenue in our sector actually comes from sales of contracts, sales, goods and services and contracts. Another 18% comes from what you call membership fees and other income areas. The remaining 35% comes from households through donations and giving. Government transfers directly through grants is at 11%, and businesses and corporate giving at 3%. So when we think about the totality where revenue is coming from or coming into the sector, a large portion of that is coming from earned revenue sources. Otherwise, through contracts with different orders of government to fulfill a public good, or self-generated revenues through social enterprise or other.
So it's not always just going out looking for donations, far from that.
Far from that. As you said on the top of the show, it is a complex way in which we fund our sector. And this is why, as Nicole alluded to, we came together to deliver the first ever thriving nonprofits program here in the province to support and train up to 11 organizations on revenue diversification.
Is that more of a challenge since about 2020, since the pandemic?
Yeah, it is, and it's also different. So some of it is more challenging, and some of it also is just different in trying to figure out how we wrap our heads around what all of that means. Now, as you kind of alluded to, the donation trends are something that very much precedes like 2020. So some of those are things we're still trying to work around and against. And we also have just like everything, we have shifts in generations in community leadership and all of these sorts of things, and that's sort of adding some complexity. And what I really love about kind of thriving nonprofits, and one of the reasons that there's community foundations all across the country that have brought this program to their communities, is it looks at a really thoughtful way across 9 different modules of revenue that charities and nonprofits can design their revenues to kind of fit their missions in their community. But it also really looks at some of the scarcity mindset challenges that we have in the sector too. And this, even the name not-for-profit can sometimes be really misleading. Like nonprofits and charities can make a profit. They, instead of going out to individual shareholders, they are just kept into their communities. And it's not a bad thing necessarily. We don't want nonprofits and charities to necessarily hoard that when their communities are needing support. But it's also a really powerful and strong thing for the financial sustainability of a nonprofit to be able to generate profit and then reinvest it in terms of what they're doing.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the scarcity mindset you referred to?
Yeah, well, again, just the name, not-for-profit. Like I remember we had one organization kind of go through the Thriving Nonprofits program and say they ended up having a conversation with a board member who was like, no, you can't make profit. And they were like, well, we can. It's just reinvested into the community. So nonprofits can very much make profit. They just can't have individuals benefit from that profit. The community, a larger group of stakeholders, are benefiting from that profit. And there's lots, as nonprofits make profit, they have to navigate to ensure that, again, there's that community benefit, that the community benefit is driving that kind of profit. So there's even that piece around the kind of scarcity piece that, oh, no, we can't kind of make profit. We can't, put a value kind of on what we're doing and put it out there for someone to kind of monetarily kind of value us back. So yeah, it's just kind of moving around that mindset piece for staff and also for kind of volunteers. Because for a long time, there is obviously the piece that Colin really helped to state, because there's both the grants that nonprofits and charities get, but then there's also the public good that they are doing on behalf of government, which is not just a grant. Like, that's something we need done, and that is contracted to the nonprofit sector to make happen. And so I think even completely wrapping our heads around that piece is not necessarily how a lot of people are thinking about how a nonprofit organizes how they're getting their revenue.
Well, when it comes to the revenue pie, Colin, I'm just wondering if we were able to get a big boost in household and corporate donations, and how much of a difference does it make? Obviously, every dollar counts, but I don't know, like, how important is that piece of the pie, and how important is it that we try to nudge it up?
So I don't look at the pie in terms of a kind of a set pie. I try to look at it, how do we grow that pie in totality at the end of the day? So I think, back to Nicole's point, around trying to find ways in order to change the way in which we think about revenue and where revenue is coming from, providing organizations and individuals working for those organizations with the toolkits to be able to understand where the revenue is coming from and where their new revenue can come from as well. And so at this point, I go back to the very simple statement, $1 more is $1 better. But we all also need to get to a point where we're thinking about it not from a scarcity mindset. Oftentimes I hear from the sector, we have to do more with less. We have to do more with less. That's an absolute. The data backs that up. I'd like to get to a point where we're doing enough with enough, that we're actually delivering on our mandates here in this province.
All right, before we go any further, I'd like to bring Nicole Denese into the conversation. She's Senior Manager of Strategic Communications with Canada Helps, and she's on the line from Mississauga, Ontario. Hi, thanks for waiting. Good morning to you.
Thanks so much for having me.
So before we go any further, for folks who aren't familiar with it, just tell us a little bit more about Canada Helps.
So Canada Helps is Canada's largest online donation and fundraising platform in Canada. Over the last 25 years, we have facilitated more than $3 billion in charitable giving to thousands of registered charities across Canada. And we allow Canadians to go to our website, canadahelps.org, and browse all of Canada's 85,000 registered charities, and then choose an organization that they want to support in the way that they want to support, whether it's making a monthly donation, a one-time donation, and a variety of other ways to support the organization.
So you did a 2024 report on where we are in this country when it comes to charitable giving. Tell me a little bit about the findings.
Yes, so our giving report is a report that we publish annually. And last year, one of the trends that we highlighted was the fact that for about 11 consecutive years, Canadians have been giving at fewer rates. So in 2010, the number of Canadians who were making a donation, actually claiming that donation on their income tax, was 23%. And then flash forward to 2021, the number of Canadians that were claiming a charitable tax receipt on their personal income tax was 17%. And granted, you know, we likely are missing Canadians when it comes to that sort of metric in that sense. You know, not everybody uses the opportunity to claim charitable tax credits on their income tax. There's also, of course, a number of other ways that you can be generous, but it's our best indicator to understand those giving trends, particularly when, depending on your financial situation or where you live in the country, you can get up to about 49% back on those tax credits.
So did you, in that report, because I had a look at it, did you identify a trend in which fewer of us are giving, or the total amount of donations is down? What does it look like?
So like I said, you know, the number of Canadians that are giving is on the decline, which is concerning, and we want to flip that. The other thing that was really interesting that we highlighted in our giving report in 2024 was that it has a really interesting connection to the number of Canadians and their social networks. So one of the things that we highlighted was the fact that Canadians who have a larger social network where they feel like they have really good close friends and a number of close friends, those Canadians gave at higher rates than those Canadians who have maybe a smaller social circle and fewer close friends, fewer close family, for example. So that was a really interesting sort of insight in the report. And then, of course, there were other bright spots. Securities donations and monthly donations has been on an increase in Canada, particularly on Canada Helps. And we know that Canadians are generous and that we want to be able to sort of allow for that generosity. At the same time, we have been living in a environment where inflation is quite high and budgets, household budgets have been stretched. So we are really pleased to see so many Canadians continue to give. Among the Canadians that are giving, they are giving at slightly higher amounts compared to others, but those are some of the trends that we've seen so far.
All right. Thanks so much for coming on the line with us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
That is Nicole Denacy with Canada Helps. She joined us from Toronto. So donations is, okay, in real terms, Colin, is it flat?
The total dollar figure of donations has remained generally flat over the last 10 years. And if you were to characterize what our donations look like, it's simply our donors. There's a smaller number of our donors who are also aging. So if you were to say what the average profile of a donor in Newfoundland Labrador looks like today, that donor is 60 years of age. They are donating approximately $100 a month, or $12.42 on an annual basis. And that differs from 10 years ago, where that average donor was 55 years of age, and they were donating a smaller portion. So we're relying on a smaller amount of people who are donating the same amount that they've donated in prior years, trying to keep up with the amount of donors that are there, and they're aging as well. So if we were to play this out in 10 years' time, I'm starting to get concerned about where the trends are going.
Right. Okay. I want to remind you that you're listening to The Signal on CBC Radio 1. If you have any thoughts on this and you'd like to join us on the air, the numbers to call are 709-722-7111 or 1-800-563-8255. You can also send an email to thesignal@cbc.ca, or you can text 709-327-8206. And I'll give you one more phone number as well. This is if you want to leave a recorded message, 709-576-5260. We have a listener on the line now. It is Richard Whitaker from Portugal Cove. Hello.
Oh, hi. How are you today, Jimmy?
I'm good, thanks. We're talking about charitable donations, nonprofits and charities in this province and where their revenue comes from and what the future looks like. So what are your thoughts?
Well, I wanted to address a couple of particular things. One of them is that now there are no newspapers. We don't know who's died. And so, we would check the obituaries, and if it was someone we knew and so on, quite often we would make a charitable donation of some sort to either the one that they specify in the obituary or one that we know would be okay anyway, that sort of thing. And for us, that would have amounted to a fairly considerable amount of money in the course of a year, especially where we're aging. Unfortunately, our confreres are leaving the scene, if you like. So that's one point that I wanted to make, and I don't know how much that's impacted things, but I suspect it's a lot, because who's going to check all the funeral homes and so forth every day to find out who's departed and that kind of thing. So that's one issue. The second one is that we get large envelopes full of junk from the Red Cross continuously. It must cost them a fortune, mailing out and producing and so forth. It ends up in the fire or the recycling and so on. But we give to the Red Cross whenever there's one of these big disaster things, and when we do that, we give quite a lot of money. But because usually there's a matching fund with it. And so, the Red Cross appears to be wasting a lot of money on that sort of thing. So that gets annoying, Anyway, I'll stop there and see if there's any comments.
Those are good points. Thanks so much for calling us up today.
Right on. Take care.
So, Colin and Nicole, a couple of points to address there. Why don't we do his most recent one first? Because it's a complaint you occasionally hear from people that they're getting these packages in the mail for fundraising, and they start thinking, well, how much are these people spending on just stuff that they send out in the mail that ends up in recycling?
Yeah, and I feel that I am also on many of those lists as someone who gives to many charities. The tricky piece is that there's still really good return on doing a lot of those direct mail pieces for charities, and it is hard. I'm sure you appreciate this in media, Jamie. It's hard to cut through and get people's attention a lot of the time. And we all get, I don't know how many emails we all get a day from different lists that we are on, and the social media algorithm, like when Facebook and some of those things first started, there was a lot that was really helpful for nonprofits and charities. There was a lot of organic kind of sharing that they could sort of get going, but now we all know that algorithms are its whole other thing that you have to deal with. And so mail is still one of the ways, especially when we talk about that profile of donor, when we're talking about folks who are generally over 50, that you're able to get through and kind of get someone's attention. And there's still really good correlation between people acting upon that piece. So I hear it, and as someone, I'm always telling my daughter, don't use that extra piece of paper, that's a tree. So as someone who that's really important, I think that is part of it. And we felt it this year with Canada Post in terms of charities having to think differently about that. So I don't know how direct mail will sort of evolve, but again, for a long time, charities are operating on the same sort of budget, and so that can also constrain people trying out new things when they're just this thing worked. And so we're going to kind of keep moving through it. And so I think, that's a really good point. And I think something that is also another part of when we're talking about it. And a lot of the nonprofits and charities we're sort of talking about that went through Thriving Nonprofits or some of the other things we do, they wouldn't be those sort of direct mail sort of folks. A lot of their giving would be coming from their local, very local sort of communities and supporters, and that wouldn't be how it was happening. They'd be more likely kind of be taking advantage of Canada Helps and some of those sorts of things. And I think the aging piece is also really important, though. It's a good opportunity. Our wills and estate planning and those sorts of things are a place where a lot of people don't realize they can have a lot of power in their giving. They might have a lot of capacity to be able to give back. So being able to plan for that, and that is something, if anyone's ever wondering about, we can kind of help with people with thinking that through. But we have also in it, you see the number of people who might be giving, but we also have a really low number of people who are kind of indicating that they're giving kind of as part of their estates. And that can be a really powerful place of kind of generating more revenue for kind of communities and causes that you care about too.
In some respects, the 2 points that the caller made are related, because he was saying, without newspapers, we don't know, who we might, what charity we might donate to on behalf of someone who just passed away. But when he made his direct mail point, it's because of the fractured media landscape. There are only so many ways to directly reach people, and the mailbox is still one of them. Colin, I don't know, do charities and nonprofits that have been around for a while constantly find that it's hard to adapt as the media landscape changes?
When I was listening to Richard that time, that's the first thought that came to mind, is as we continue to push towards digitization, continuing to push into more impersonal ways of connecting with each other, charities and nonprofits and those who are donating are moving with the times. That being said, direct mail-outs, the reason why organizations still do direct mail-outs is because direct mail-outs work. Typically, organizations, particularly larger ones who have done the analysis, understand that if I spend this amount of dollars on a direct mail out, it should return this amount based on our past history. And sometimes it's a more beneficial way of raising funds, particularly around when there's a disaster, for example, than other means like holding a charity fundraiser or an auction or another way of fundraising. And I think about Canada Helps in particular in this conversation around the mail-outs, because that's an incredibly good point. There's a reason why Imagine Canada, Canada Helps, and other charities and sector councils and organizations across Canada were pushing for an extension of the charitable deadline, because charities and nonprofits, charities in particular, rely on mail-out sometimes to raise revenues. And because of the Canada Post strike, that was not easy to do. And so the federal government has committed to an extension of the ability for Canadians to claim their donations on their upcoming tax return. I think, into February. I have to double check on
The end of February.
the end of February. There you go.
It's the same as our RSPs for this season. So.
Okay. That's a one-year only thing because of the Canada Post strike.
Yeah.
That still speaks to the power of direct mail.
There's a percentage of revenue that fundraisers can expect from direct mail. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But the data, I always suggest to people that if they're concerned about where their charitable donations are going to, most charities and nonprofits post their financial statements or their annual reports online. Always encourage people to understand the causes that they're donating to. And online on CRA website, there's a charities directorate, which you can get information about charities as well. So there's a number of ways that we can learn more about the causes that we're donating to.
Interesting. Okay, so direct mail still works. It's essentially an investment by charities that do it. So that's why you're getting something in the mail. Okay, I didn't know that. Thanks for making that point. We're joined on the line now by Leon Mills, Executive Director of the Canadian Hard of Hearing Association for Newfoundland and Labrador. Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. How you doing?
I'm good, thanks. From the perspective of your organization, what are some of the most effective means of fundraising, and how important is it?
Well, for us, we've always relied on lotteries. As you know, we do the Ultimate Dream Home Lottery. We just finished our 39th home in 30 years, and that accounts for probably, I'll say 89% of our annual funding. And then we also do a spring 50-50 lottery that, brings in some, and we have some social enterprises and stuff like that. So we're mostly a self-funded charity. We get a small annual grant from the provincial government, $15,800 a year. And we're trying to get more, of course. We always are, but to date we haven't been very successful. But we're mostly, driven by lottery systems.
Can you tell me a little bit about the history and how that Dream Home Lottery originally came to be?
Well, when I first came here 30 years ago, we were a small, I would call, dining room table organization kind of thing. I was the first sort of full-time staff member, and the association was able to get a small grant. But to continue and keep things going, I just said to our board at the time, we need to do some sort of a large-scale fundraiser. So we had hired our current director of fund development. He's been here 30 years too, like me. And he brought this concept from Western Canada, where he had worked for a couple of years, about having a home. But the big difference was, instead of having a $100 ticket, we decided to have it as when we first started, a $20 ticket, and then went to 25 and then 30 because of increasing costs. But we decided to make it available to so the average person could afford it, and it worked really well. So that's what we've been doing. And unlike some other lotteries, like the healthcare one with $100, it's just a different market kind of thing. So we've always basically tried to make it so that an average person can access the lottery stream.
You needed good relationships in the corporate and business world, I take it, to make that lottery work.
Oh, yes. I mean, it was never. We were extremely lucky to make it work. The sponsors assume some risk, liability, in case it fails. That's something we worked out on a contractual basis with our various sponsors. But I'm pleased to say, 39 and counting, we're never had an issue, and hopefully it'll be able to continue going,
But as it stands, given those revenue streams that you have, you're mostly self-sufficient except for that small government donation fund?
Yeah. And, the rule of thumb in finances, you shouldn't have all your eggs in one basket, as it were, but knowing that and doing something about it, especially in a crowded market, small market like Newfoundland, is extremely challenging, so we're still overly reliant on the Dream Home. We know that. We've tried different things to diversify funding, like getting money from government to, more annual money, because they give some groups a lot of money, they give some groups none, they give others a little bit, so there's no rhyme or reason to how they do it, and we've been, recommending to them for decades that they implement some sort of criterion-based system to look at charities in a more equitable manner. But so anyway, we tried to diversify, and we haven't been successful in government, so we decided, start some social enterprises, and that brings in some money, and we've leveraged our, abilities and expertise that we have with lotteries to offer that service to other charities. So, but again, the bulk of our funds, we're tied to the Dream Home, and I guess we always will be as far as I can see things going in, the way the economy is, and especially the current uncertainty with terrorists and all that kind of stuff going forward. So we're very concerned about that as well.
Costs are certainly much more for an organization like yours than they would have been 30 years ago when you first started that lottery. Are you optimistic that your funding model can keep up with the current cost of doing business?
Well, so far so good. I'll give you an example. The very first Dream Home, the entire price package of the house, and land and car, furniture in the house, was $150,000. And the latest one is something more along the lines of $750,000 for us. So, over the years, like I said, we were able to absorb a lot of costs, but at several price points, we had to increase the fees from, first we went from 20 to 25, and then we went this year we went from 25 to 30, just because we have to. We have no choice. And I think hopefully people understand that, that costs keep going up, especially in the last few years because of COVID. People realize that everything is increased. So it's challenging, I have to say, from doing a budget perspective. Every year it's pretty tight, and but so far we've managed to hang in there. But costs keep going up, and you can only sell so many tickets. So yeah, I'm concerned going forward, like how much longer we can keep doing that, and without having to make some cuts somewhere, which you really don't want to do, right? So we'll see how things go.
Leon, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, you're very welcome. And, I'm glad you had this show on to try to create some awareness for people about, what it takes to make things work in the nonprofit sector. And I just want to say a big thank you to our ticket buying public and sponsors who support us year after year. And because without you, we wouldn't exist and be able to be the only entity, basically, that offers non-medical support for people with hearing loss in Newfoundland and Labrador. So thank you very much for having us.
All right. Have a great day.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
That is Leon Mills, Executive Director of the Canadian Hard of Hearing Association for this province. Nicole, they found a model that works, and they have the good fortune of the fact that over the years it keeps working. Having said that, I guess not every charitable organization can give away a dream home.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I want to thank Leon for coming on. He's a really generous colleague in the sector in general. And I know that means a lot to a lot of people. And I think their piece too, and we know, and he said even that with kind of what the price of the tickets or kind of different things, that costs have gone up, costs have gone up for folks. And so we know that plays in when people are thinking about giving and those sorts of things. And I think there's also an opportunity to sort of make giving part of your giving. We all have a lot of giving we do throughout the year, and I think there's a way to think about how we might be more charitable within that. Dream Home tickets are a great potential, gift for people, or Canada Helps has amazing gift cards where you can give to any of those 85,000 charities by buying a Canada Helps gift card. Or I know for my little girl's birthday, she gets to pick a charity that she's going to kind of ask her friends to give to, in terms of instead of getting gifts, and it's kind of simpler from the parents, and she gets to kind of participate in something. She always picks something to do with animals because she loves her cats. So there's lots of ways too that there is that piece on charities and nonprofits to think about the innovation, and then there is a piece for us as the public who benefits from these organizations and government and all these people that we can think about. Okay, how can we kind of more step into our parts too?
I want to turn to our next caller. Jeff Hutchings, listener in CBS, is on the line. Hello.
Hi there. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. What are your thoughts on the current state of the charitable and nonprofit world here in this province?
I think it, is somewhat disheartening, but we found a way that we can give back. Myself and 4 or 5 of my friends who have a band. And what we do is we play every week, and whatever we make, we donate. In our case, we donate to Daffodil Place. And we're not, we're a band that don't depend on the money. So we're all either retired or still working. And, we were playing together all the time anyway, and we said, hey, let's start to do something with this. And we've been doing that ever since. And then once a month we go to Daffodil Place and donate whatever we've raised. And it's great I think it's great for everybody.
That sounds like a terrific idea. I guess some months you have more to donate than others, but you're always showing up and always making a contribution, right?
Exactly. And I mean, we sort of, hire ourselves out for a more than reasonable rate. So if someone has an 80th birthday party, or if there's something going on, Rib Fest or whatever, we play, and we charge a certain amount, which is not very much at all. And then we put out sort of like the donation can and say, hey, we're playing for Daffodil Place, and we get a tremendous response. I mean, it's fantastic. So it's something, I guess, that other musicians who sort of do this as a side gig or whatever might consider, hey, and donate some money.
Jeff, thanks so much for joining us on the show today. Good to hear from you.
All right, thank you.
That's Jeff Hutchings, a caller in CBS. I guess one of the things that it calls to mind is that we often talk about charities having to get more creative about how they go about raising funds. And Colin, I guess sometimes we could do a better job of being more creative on how we come up with ways to support charity, right?
We can indeed. And it's not lost on any of us that we exist in different economic times than 10 years ago or 20 years ago. We know there's a rise in the need for two-income households. That's been a consistent stat over the last 40 years in particular. We know the cost of living has increased. Things are costing a little bit more than they used to, and we're not as many people are able to give, and that's a simple truth. And so what Jeff outlined there is a beautiful example of trading something that has value into charitable intent. Being a musician, it brings joy, brings music, but that has a value. That has a tangible value. And are able to leverage their skills to create and generate more donations for charity. If we think about it that way as individuals, what do we have of value to society, to the world around us that we could potentially give? Giving is not just donating. Giving is giving your time, giving your value, giving your voice. If you're not able to donate, if you're not able to volunteer, give your voice. Share your favorite charity or your cause on social media platforms. Tell your friends about causes that are important to you. As parents, take a unique opportunity. I love that, by the way. Take a unique opportunity to instill the value of donating and charity into the next generation, because we know in the research that we've looked at and we've done ourselves, our children model our behavior, and they model if we are volunteers or if we donate. So one of the easiest ways for us to shift a little bit of that demographical shift right now is to instill about charitable giving to the next generation.
Okay. We have another listener on the line. It's Daryl Goff. He's in Gander. Hello.
Oh, hi. How are you today?
I'm good, thanks. What are your thoughts on the topic of the day on charities, nonprofits, and their revenues?
Well, my thoughts on charities and non-profits, I've expressed what I'm going to say a long time ago, is that we got to be more open-minded and innovative and creative, like as pertaining to generating revenue. Yes, there's good ways of doing things, like having lotteries, the healthcare foundations, and like you just said there not too long ago, like doing events, fundraising through music, and all your calls today, they're fantastic, and I commend them for their contribution. There's great ideas, but what charities and nonprofits got to start doing, they got to think outside the box. And what I mean by that and being innovative, what they should be doing, a lot of these charities and nonprofits, is offer like say for example a product for service like for example if it like you do everything online now like say like for example healthcare products or something that the general population need. If they went that route, then there'll be revenue that's coming into the nonprofit and charitable organizations, and then that part of it, like they generate money, and then they can always put the energies in other ways, like getting volunteers, wherever the case may be. But way things are going now, and God only knows what's going to happen now, like recent events and whatever. I hope things do go for the better, but people are going to be more pinched for the dollar. And a lot of people got no money to spare to donate or whatever. Yes, they probably might have time, but the money, monetary-wise, people just don't have it no more, and it's very sad. It's not like what it used to be. So what they got to start doing, I'll reiterate, is that they got to offer like a product for service or something that people need, like as I stated, healthcare products or whatever. You do it online, or I don't know, could be anything, whatever people need, like offer to them. And that way, I think this way we got to start looking, because most nonprofits and charitable organizations are not open-minded to that. When you look at it, you go through all the organizations in Canada, like Diabetes Association, whatever the case may be, their mindset is not in the right place. They got to be open-minded. So if you need donations or whatever, this is another way of generating revenue in general.
All right, Darryl, thanks so much for joining us on the show. Thanks for calling in.
Yeah, and thank you for your time and great show, and all the best to you and your listening audience and staff at CBC.
All right, sir. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too.
Now, earlier in the show, and I can't remember the numbers that went out, but Colin and Nicole, one or both of you were talking about which part of the revenue stream for a lot of our charities and nonprofits comes from offering goods and services and taking the money from that and reinvesting it in the community.
Oh, that was me.
Was that you?
So on a total basis, charities and nonprofits in our province generate 65% of that $1.2 billion from earned income. That includes the sales of goods and services. That's 41%. It's just goods and services. Now, those goods and services contain a plethora of pieces. One is government contracts, in which the government contract is a service contract. Another is social enterprise revenue, which I think where Darryl is leading a bit of his conversation to. We're seeing a rise of social entrepreneurship in our province, and we're trying to foster that rise as well. Charities, nonprofits, volunteers, board members, the staff they're in, thinking about new and diversified ways in which to bring revenue in. I like the concept of thinking outside the box. What I recommend to people is just jump on top of that box. Use what's currently working as the base to sustain, but then think about what you can add on top of that. And so I'll give you one example. One example pops in mind immediately is the Home Again Furniture Bank. And they have a furniture thrift store over on Hebron Way called Again and Again. And they're sustaining a nice portion of their operations through their retail outlet. They have a space and they're selling furniture. Then they use that furniture in their charitable purpose. Not just the revenues that are generated, but they also have partnerships for people to actually work at the retail outlet as well, and actually renovate and fix some of the furniture as well. And so they do fundraisers. They act as a furniture bank, particularly their Heads Without Beds campaign. But to supplement that, they're thinking about new ways to diversify their revenue. And one way was to create a thrift store for furniture, which fit perfectly into their mandate.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think one other piece, a lot of times when people think about these products or coming up with something people need, they think like nonprofits or charities have to create something new. One thing I know that we're seeing a lot of is sort of people moving into this through acquisition, and just a plug for things that are happening over at like CSC is they have programs that can help nonprofits to acquire. So we have a huge number, if you like, and you can see this in lots of stats, of people who are looking to sort of transition their businesses because they're retiring in some fashion, and they might not have a way of maybe handing that down in the way they may have in generations past. And so there's lots of nonprofits and charities who are exploring that acquisition piece. They don't necessarily have to come up with a new thing. They're able to say, this thing is working, and we can figure out how we can absorb it, both for our revenue, but also thinking about how that amazing, community business asset helps them work towards, the mission that they're doing in the community too. So there's that side of it, but there's also, and I'll say that for entrepreneurs or folks who might be thinking about what they're going to do with their business in the future is to explore having it acquired potentially by a nonprofit or a charity or converted into a cooperative. Like there's now tax benefits for some of those pieces. So. Yeah, that there's lots of different ways of thinking outside of the box that might not necessarily have to be coming up with something brand new. It can be kind of repurposing the things we already have.
I can always count on Nicole to plug some of the work that we're doing. So what she's referring to is a pilot project that we're working on called Social Enterprise Through Acquisition. And it's simply that. Across Newfoundland and Labrador, I think the last stat we received is that 65% of small business owners are thinking about retiring in the next 5 to 10 years. That's 65% of small businesses across particularly rural Newfoundland and Labrador that are service-oriented businesses. They could be your local shop, your local garage in particular, that are actively looking to sell. Challenge is selling in that market. And so one of the options for a small business owner who prioritizes keeping their staff employed, they prioritize keeping the business in the community, and they prioritize, after that, the sale price. And so if they're thinking about their community, why not think about their community? And why don't their community think about them? So we're building out a pathway for charities and nonprofits to purchase the local businesses to act as a new revenue stream. And so we'll be excited to announce some even more stuff about that over the next couple of months.
Ah, okay. Interesting. Little tease at the end. That's good. That's always good. We have Elizabeth Siegel on the line now. She's manager of volunteers and support housing with Connections for Seniors. Hello.
Good morning.
How does the fundraising and revenue profile look like with Connections for Seniors right now?
Well, I will tell you, we actually do have a couple social enterprises. One of them is Rock Meals that provides prepared meals for seniors who maybe are not cooking anymore or need a little bit more help at home at a reasonable cost. And just this year, we've also started a snow clearing business that provides snow clearing for seniors at a slightly below commercial cost. So it's providing a needed service, and it's also providing revenue.
So it's doing, Connections for Seniors, I would assume helping people with things like practical things like meals and snow clearing at this time of year is part of your mandate, but it also adds to the bank account?
Yes, well, exactly. And, to be able to support people with those services is huge. And if there's some people out there who really, really need it and are quite willing to pay for it, then that just helps us to bring it to more people.
Are those two social enterprises relatively new to the organization?
They are. I think Rock Meals is maybe only 4 or 5 months old. And as of the first snowfall this year, that was our first time out there clearing the snow.
Are you able to tell yet what kind of a difference it might make to your bottom line?
I wouldn't really be the one to answer that, but I know we're getting a really good response. And we're also really happy that people are pleased that we're offering a service that's lower than what they would probably otherwise get, a little bit more affordable.
That sounds terrific. What else are you doing over there with Connections for Seniors? Is fundraising and revenue a common conversation, I guess, that you're always having?
It is, but I just want to throw in a shout out for people in general. I've only been with the organization since September, so this Christmas was my first Christmas with the organization, and I was overwhelmed with both corporate donations, with people dropping off stockings for seniors, pajamas for seniors. There's really a lot of good people out there, and I think there's also different ways that people can contribute. So, obviously money is always appreciated and it helps us do what we do. But those gifts for seniors, providing time, for helping with our programs, or, you know, even if they're not doing it through an organization, if they're out there helping a neighbor, maybe clearing their walkway or something. I mean, there's lots of ways that people do and can donate.
Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
That is Elizabeth Siegel. She's with Connections for Seniors here in St. John's. One thing she did refer to, Nicole, that we've touched on but not really discussed is that people can donate their time.
They very much can. Or those gifts or those things. There are a lot of things that don't necessarily show up in a tax filing. So this is one thing that, yes, we do feel in the nonprofit sector and within the charitable world that we need to be conscious of. And I think particularly in our province, maybe more so than other places, our culture of generosity really does include more of those sort of in-kind sort of elements. And so we don't want to, to lose sight of that in amongst this, to say that, you know, we're kind of in the middle or the end of the pack on charitable donations. And we have an immense amount of generosity that happens in this place that doesn't show up kind of when you file your tax filing. So it's really important to keep that and to anchor it in the fact that all of these things often are indicators of how much connection we're feeling kind of with our neighbors and with other people in the communities, and that sense of I have a sense of responsibility to kind of take care of this place, and I have an ability to kind of reach out when I am going to need that support, and just being really conscious that there's aspects of that if we also spend a lot more time on those things, that some of these things will also follow. That, you know, we're seeing belonging and connection and loneliness and all of these things that are statistics that are not necessarily going in the direction I think we want on that. And so how are we focusing on more of those aspects? Because we know that when, as Nicole from Canada Helps alluded to, that when folks have those like engaged larger social networks, those are one of the big things that really influence, like if they're giving it on. Again, they feel like they are part of something that they are giving to and they are receiving from.
We're actually winding down, coming up pretty close to 1 o'clock Island time. Colin, I wonder if you have any further thoughts on just how we can keep our charities and nonprofits robust and well-funded and really involved in the community in the future. How can we all be a better part of that?
So I go back to the first conversation we had. I can't believe nearly an hour has passed already. I go back to how we finance and how we raise revenue for our charities and nonprofits, how we keep them sustainable and sustained, and then potentially growing in the future. All comes down to how complex that equation is. It includes both charitable giving, cash donations that our charities and nonprofits absolutely need. It comes down to fulfilling that need through other ways donating your time, donating your skill, donating your intent, and donating your voice. There's a whole plethora of toolkits that both charities and nonprofits and ourselves as Newfoundlanders and Labradorians can use. It all comes down to what is the best tool for you, deciding what that best tool is, and then deploying that best tool to the cause that is most important to you. So as Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, we're known as a bit of a giving province. We do have a high sense of belonging, and we do have a high engagement with our community. As we continue to go through these sometimes turbulent economic times, some uncertainty, let's keep that close to heart. Who we are. We are the caring province, and we should always continue to be.
Nicole, I have to ask you to be somewhat brief, but a closing thought from you?
Yeah, I think to kind of build on what Colin was saying, it's just looking for those opportunities to make giving, a part of our day, a part of our week, a part of our month, just more in terms of like what we might be thinking about doing. So whether that is shoveling your neighbor's sidewalk or supporting someone in your family, or really thinking about, as you're, particularly this year, lots of folks I know think about, am I there with my RRSP, contributions that I need to make this year. You have an opportunity to also look at that charitable piece because it is a way to give, and there is that very generous kind of tax piece that comes with it. And you have a really short time window this year between when you are going to make that donation at the end of February and when you're going to kind of see it come through again on your tax return this year.
Thank you both. Nicole Daw, Community Foundation of Newfoundland and Labrador, thanks for dropping by.
Thank you, Jamie.
Colin Corcoran, Community Sector Council of Newfoundland and Labrador, thanks for your thoughts today.
Always a pleasure.
And that is it for today's episode of the show. Please remember that this and all previous episodes of The Signal are available on the CBC Listen app and at CBC Newfoundland and Labrador YouTube's channel. To join our daily conversation, you can always send us an email, thesignal@cbc.ca, or leave us a voicemail at 709-576-5260. Coming up tomorrow, do you drive electric? For almost all of us, the answer is no. Electric vehicles remain just a tiny percentage of cars sold in Newfoundland and Labrador. How do we get more of us behind the EV wheel? That's tomorrow's topic. I'm Jamie Fitzpatrick. Thanks for listening to The Signal.